Okay, going live, going live, going live. Let's make sure that the audio is working just perfectly because you just never know. You never know with these things. So hopefully I'm coming through well for everyone. Say, waiting to hear how it sounds on my end. Okay, seems like everything is good. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Hope you are having a fantastic Friday wherever you are. And if it's not the evening, if it's morning, the day, the night, hope that you are having a blast. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we are going to be talking about questions, answers, writing problems, hopefully finding some solutions, and I'll also have a little lesson later on that while should help out with any sort of writing challenges or goals that you have for yourself. I think that they can also be easily applied to anything that you wish to do in real life. It's one of the beauties of writing is that not only is a great creative release and you get to learn all these amazing things, you also get to also exercise, practice, and learn some valuable life lessons. Am I actively playing Elden Ring or just looping a video? I have a recorded video right here, but Sen, I will later on be experimenting with what it's like to play and talk at the exact same time. I do kind of want to do a cruisy run through for Deltarune before the new year. We'll see what happens. It's a goal. It's a wish. Dream is a wish my heart has made. Though if I were to actively try to speak while playing Elden Ring, it would have to be something easy like this, because if it's a boss fight and also then trying to talk writing advice, oh boy, it would quickly devolve into me just muttering in German under my breath. Because I am not a gamer. I am in awe of all the amazing YouTubers out there that are able to play games and provide commentary at the same time, because that's definitely not me. All right. So as far as getting us going for the evening, as we wait for people to filter on in and start, and we get to start up the conversation about any questions you may have, any writing problems you might right now be confronting, I do want to take the opportunity to talk about some things that came up in the comments of some of our most recent videos, and address some writing problems and conundrums that I saw recently come up. So for one of them, we're going to come on over here to good old Dandadan. Now then, this by now is more than a week old. The particular episode that Scott and I did a review on, having a look at the flashback into the story of the Red Silky and what inspired a poor woman to decide to stick around and become a horrifying ghost. If you haven't yet watched Dandadan, definitely worth watching. And if you haven't seen our video, then please give it a view, because Scott and I have a blast talking about this show. But to give you some context, whether you've seen this or not, in this episode of Dandadan, where the main characters Momo and Okarun are going up against this ghost named Red Silky that is able to use acrobatic abilities and magical powers and magical hair to fight people, to destroy this warehouse and everything. Their classmate, Ira, gets caught up in the fight and actually gets killed. And the only way to save her is to take a more powerful aura from a greater spirit and funnel it into her body to basically restart her soul. Otherwise, she'll die. And Red Silky, the spirit that's been attacking them, volunteers to sacrifice her aura to bring Ira back to life. But in so doing, Momo and Ira get to glimpse the history of the woman who became the Red Silky. And that then pops you into some of the footage that you're seeing right here, which is the flashback of this woman who's raising a young girl, and things just fall apart instantly. Her life isn't the best, but she absolutely loves her daughter. She cherishes all the time that she has with her. But then one night, everything goes to the worst hell in a handbasket it possibly could. She ends up dancing right off of a roof in desperation, and then we get to see what happens to her as a result of that. So, hey there, ISO, great to have you here. Now then, one of the comments that I saw in regards to our breakdown of this episode and its events was one person saying, "Oh, I didn't feel a thing," because we were talking about how emotional it is. Like, it is such an emotional moment when you get to see what's happened to this woman, how she became a monster, and how she then attaches herself to Ira. It's such a beautiful thing, and it's done with almost no dialogue. Very, very little dialogue is done. It's all action. It's all music, setting the atmosphere and presenting to you the message without ever having to explain it. And a couple of the things that I've seen people talk about is, number one, they're all like, "I didn't get what's going on. Why isn't someone talking?" It's like, yeah, you don't need to have everything spoon-fed to you in order to understand what's going on in a scene. Learn how to watch something. Learn how to actually pay attention to what's going on. The commenting option got deleted? Say what? Totally, Tommy? We're going to have to have a look into that. Hey there, TV account. Good to see you here. You haven't really missed anything. So people need to learn a little bit more in terms of media literacy. Learn how to read the scene. Learn how to pick up on characters' actions. Learn how to feel music, not just simply listen to music. When I was a teacher, I had so many times I had kids who would just obviously put in music into their ears to try to tune me out or to tune out what their classmates were saying. And there'd be a couple of times where I'd ask them, like, "Hey, what are you actually listening to?" And at first they'd be shocked. They're like, well, I'm listening to this person. I'm like, "Okay, what's the genre?" A rap, I guess. "Okay, well, what's the song about?" "It's cool." "Okay, but what's the song about?" "I don't know. I'm just listening to it." I'm like, well, if you're not actually paying attention to the music, then I need you to pay attention in my class. And there's so many people who just listen to music to fill up time without paying attention to what the music is actually trying to communicate. There's loads of people who watch shows not to actually enjoy them, not even to really take anything away from them. It's just they're looking for something to take up the time, take up the space. And we got to learn, we got to reteach ourselves, I think, and we got to help to encourage other people to actually appreciate the entertainment that they are taking in, to actually listen to the lyrics of a song, to pay attention to what's happening here on the screen. You don't need any words to realize just how much this woman loves her daughter and what kind of horrible life she's living through, what she's sacrificing to give her daughter even just the simplest gift of a red dress. You don't need things to be spoon-fed to you. So media literacy, learn how to pay attention, learn how to appreciate what's actually coming. But then coming back to the comment in the video that sparked this all, person saying, "I didn't feel anything. There was no emotion." And there was no emotion because do you know how many times anime has shown to me some character's tragic backstory to make everything they did better? Yeah, this is stupid. I don't feel anything. This show is dumb. To which then I thought about that and I was like, okay, here's that, like, there's a point to be made here, but there's really two lessons. Number one, it is very, very possible to completely overuse a trope. And we've talked about this before in the past. Tropes in and of themselves aren't bad. Why is media literacy? LOL. Exactly. I guess the question is not what is media literacy, but how is media literacy? You know what? Excellent questions right there. And I'll give you guys my answer to that here in a moment. But yes, understand that some tropes can be taken way too far. It's become a cliche with an anime, especially with an action anime, that you'll get a flashback that will suddenly explain everything really fast to you, why someone is a villain, and then boom, you're supposed to sympathize with them. And yeah, I don't like that. If you want me to sympathize with a villain, I actually have to get to know that villain, and I need to get to see what good qualities they have and what motivations they have that I might identify with. They might not even be good motivations. They don't even need to be good motivations. They don't even need to have good qualities. They just need to have qualities and motivations that I can empathize with or identify with. And when you do that, your villains can become relatable to your audience without having to retcon them to suddenly make them good people. And when you watch the flashback, the Red Silky is a victim, obviously, but it does not excuse any of the horrible things that she's done. In fact, the show, if any, there's the one moment where the show spells it out for you. Red Silky is culpable, is responsible for all of her horrible actions. She did them, and she's screwed as a result. The only thing that saves her is that Ira is willing to forgive her and remember her. That is the only thing that saves Red Silky from being damned for all eternity. And that's because of the good person that Ira actually is. And so it leaves it then up to the audience to really think about what Red Silky's story actually means and what we should take away from it. So for that commenter, first of all, think about what the story is actually telling us, and to other writers, understand the tropes that you're using and understand how other people might have abused those tropes, so that way you can avoid doing that same mistake yourself. So what is media literacy? Media literacy, we normally talk about media literacy and understanding the different kinds of social media that exist, from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram, now to Blue Sky, to YouTube, and Google and so forth. But also media literacy really also has become understanding what kind of medium you're looking at and what kind of story you are receiving. I remember when Murder Drones was premiering, and so many people were super excited for the show, obviously, because it's a great show, and a lot of people were having a whole lot of fun with it. And then they had a hard time reconciling the horror elements that became more prominent as the show progressed. And it was in part because they latched on so much to the humor that they forgot that in the first episode introduced a lot of dark stuff to us. Liam Vickers did what he was supposed to do. He set all the expectations in the first episode of what you could expect going forward. But audiences have forgotten that the opening chapter of a show, or that the opening scene of a movie, or the opening chapter of a book is there to help set the expectations for everything that's about to come. For too long, we've just been told to be entertained. And for too long, kids have not been taught about how to properly understand a story. Rather, it is, here's a story. Read it, comprehend it. What's comprehension? Figure it out. What am I reading? I don't know. Let's talk about how to write a paragraph. Yeah, this isn't helping anything any. Okay, Lars, let's get off the topic of education. Otherwise, this will careen into a really horrible dark rant. Ultimately, what is media literacy? Media literacy is knowing what you're engaging with, whether it be a certain website or a story. And once you know what you're dealing with, you know then what you should look out for. To look out for the fakes and for the false news and whatnot, the misconceptions, or the really obvious edits or even subtle edits in social media. But when it comes to a story, by understanding the story that you're looking at, when you understand the genre, you then know what to expect from an action, from a romance, from a drama, a rom-com, action flick, espionage flick, you then know what kind of to expect. And that way, then you're actually even more surprised, even more pleased when the story then starts doing things that are really interesting and creative. By being media literate with a story, it's not that you know how the story is going to end from the very beginning, but rather, okay, I'm buckled in the case of Dandadan, I'm buckling in for a really crazy, supernatural, comedic thriller. Wow, that's a lot of stuff thrown together. Okay, then. So I now know I need to keep an eye out for the supernatural. I need to keep an eye out for the thriller aspects, for the zany aspects, and for the comedic aspects. Okay, the first episode also delivered a very dark scene with aliens trying to probe Momo in very suggestive ways. That scene shocked a lot of people, made them very upset. That scene existed in the first episode to let the audience know this show, even when it's funny, will go dark. If you want to continue watching, this is what you're signing up for. If more people understood that going into a book, into a show, or into a movie, I think you'd have more people who are willing to engage with that story and be willing to give it a chance and actually interact with it. Not necessarily that you're speaking at the screen as it's going or yelling into the book as you're reading, but rather that your thoughts are playing off of what the story is doing. So that way you can see what works, what doesn't, that you understand these characters, you understand where the plot is going, you understand the world. It's about opening yourself up to the possibilities that the story is going to give to you. So how do you get there? The answer about how you get there is that you've got to study. You've got to study. You've got to have a look at it. Like, take for instance right here. I know you guys can't see this, but I have right next to me, I have the book The Toll, which is the third book in the Scythe series, which is a fantastic series of books. This right here, once I knew that what I'm reading is I'm reading a teenage story set in a dystopian future. Oh, okay. Now I know what to start looking for. Where's the dystopian government? Who is going to be the rebellious leader? Who's going to be the love interest? If I didn't know those things and just simply dived into the series and was like, okay, so people can't die. There's Grim Reapers who are employed to murder people. And apparently this is making people really upset that the Grim Reapers kill a certain number of people every year. But it makes sense because everyone is immortal. So why are they so upset? Are they upset because they don't like to die? Well, that's not really something that you sometimes find within the book. Being media literate helps you to realize what is you're reading, look for the clues and the cues, so that way you can better pick up what the story is telling you. Because if you just read Grim Reapers, teenagers becoming Grim Reapers, it's then actually not as interesting as the story really is. Whew, that was a waffle right there. I do apologize. Hey, Spencer's on. Woo! Spencer, oh my gosh. It's great to have you here. Love the Scythe books. Yes, the Scythe books are awesome. I highly recommend. First book, Scythe. Second book is Thunderhead. And then the third book is The Toll. Absolutely worth reading. Okay. So hopping back on up here. TV Camp, do you think Netflix ruined Dandadan? No, I don't think so at all. Who's saying that? I've enjoyed it. And the funny thing is this, I've also listened to Dandadan translated on over into German. It's just as insane. If not even crazier. Let's see here. Tommy says, my fiction has went from private moving pictures with text to indie animation show to a movie to a show again to a game. I guess it took a lot of choosing. All right. Say, sometimes stories go through a lot of iterations there, Totally Tommy. I get that. Fabio, I want to make some animations, games, and that's basically it, I guess. I've thought of a movie, but man, the movie I've imagined is full of assumptions, I guess. I mean, it kind of goes off of games, yet, okay, I guess it can work, but it feels a bit of a mess. Well, sit down and actually figure out your story. I love the advice from Critical Drinker about how to get published. And his very first bit of advice was finish the book. He's like, everything that I have to say, unless you have finished your book, means nothing to you. You finish the book and then come back and watch this video. It's absolutely true. Spencer says they also have a short story collection, but I didn't love that one. Oh, I didn't know that there were short stories for Scythe. But if you didn't love that, I don't know if I should check it out then. But I am also kind of interested, because there's a lot of interesting side characters and other bits of history and story that I would love to get for Scythe. TV Count, I saw a video recommended in my feed, but I didn't watch it though. Okay. Especially if they're adaptations based off of a book series instead of just one novel. Okay, yeah. Say if you see a video that has a very interesting or clickbaity title, always worth beginning it, in my opinion, just to hopefully hear their quick arguments, and then you can educate yourself on whether or not they've got it right. And I say you can even do that for me. All right, so that was basically my little bit right there, my odd rant in regards to the comment from about Dandadan. Again, I do agree with what the commenter said about how it's kind of overdone, that too many villains are given flashbacks to try to make them sympathetic. If you want to make a villain sympathetic, please put in the effort to make your villain an actual person with qualities, personality traits, abilities, motivations, and the likes that feel realistic to you and to your audience. It's one of the things that actually, if as a little sidebar here, if you want a really excellent example of a very relatable villain, Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. Because Dr. Doofenshmirtz has every reason to be a villain. My family abandoned me to be raised by gnomes and ocelots. Like, when you get that, it's like, of course he's going to hate his brother. Of course he's going to do everything he can to destroy his brother's career as the mayor of the tri-state area. You don't have to make a villain as goofy or as incompetent as Dr. Doofenshmirtz, but Dr. Doofenshmirtz, I think, is a really good example of a relatable villain in that he's got reasons to be angry. He makes mistakes. He makes plenty of mistakes. And actually, sometimes some of his mistakes make really good sense why it happens. He's got a bad dating life, which he really wants to get over. He loves his daughter, and he's even actually on good terms with his ex-wife. Like, all of these things make Dr. D just feel real, despite the fact that I'm a mad scientist fighting against this platypus agent. I love doing Dr. Doofenshmirtz's voice. I'm sorry to hear that you can't sleep right now, Totally Tommy. Say, hopefully I can lull you to sleep with my pedantic rantings. Hey, Arts is here. Great to see you. Fabio says the villains start. Let's see here. Vivian. Come back together. Fabio says the villain starts about where the player confirmed to start. So he's a bit of a mystery in this action platformer. So he's spreading this mind control kind of randomly until it progressively starts getting more purposeful. Interesting. A villain taking control of people's minds at the beginning of the game, slowly but surely. That is a very pernicious opening right there, and I like that, especially if you don't know who's going to get mind controlled. All right, so that was my commentary for the comment from Dandadan. And another bit of commentary that I found very interesting to see different people's reactions to was the the live action How to Train Your Dragon. Now, on our Discord server, I've already seen people have this discussion and be all like, Nope. Nope. No way, no how. I do not need a live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon. And I would like to hear from the people here in our chat. What are your thoughts on the upcoming live action adaptation for How to Train Your Dragon? I will say my piece on this again. I for one thing don't like that we're remaking movies that are so near to us in terms of time. Well, these movies are not very old, and the animation quality still holds up pretty well. I don't see a reason, technically speaking, to build on these movies. And furthermore, they're so concise, so well done, that I don't see what else you could really do unless you're going to pull on a whole lot more material from the books and really give us a whole lot of extra world building. I really don't see the need beyond that. Ultimately, yeah, this is a corporate cash grab. DreamWorks and Universal Studios want an easy win, and How to Train Your Dragon is an easy win if done well. And they brought on De Blasio, if I remember that's the guy's name correctly, the guy who originally directed the animated movies. He came back to direct the live action feature. So bring back together the dream team. Let's see if we can make this happen and make $1 billion. I get the reasoning behind it. But speaking as a storyteller, I don't really see the need. I think it can be a lot of fun. And if they got something new to add to it, it could be really cool. And I want to see Gerard Butler as a Viking. But beyond that, I just don't know. So Art says it's kind of surreal. Toothless looks exactly the same. Yes, he does. And I'll talk about why that is. I'll talk about why that is here in a moment. But it's great that you point that out, because that's essential to what's going on here. A live action Hiccup touching a CG Toothless. It's a bit too much. Hannah says it's a bit too much live action remakes. Amen. I agree. TV account. Why did they just make a live action version of the books directly? A straight up adaptation. TV account, that is a great suggestion right there. I think they could have done that and have done pretty well. I think it's because whoever mandated this remake had no idea that the books even existed. Or I should say that the books even exist. It's not like they've ceased to exist. They exist still. You can still buy them and read them. ISO, it needs to blow me out of the water. It needs to include really good plot points that weren't in the original in order to be a good movie. Yes, plot points that complement everything that happens and helps to build up the characters even more. The side characters, other than Astrid, in the first movie could have probably used with a little bit more characterization. But ultimately, the first movie does everything it needs to do. It takes Hiccup from an outsider, awkward kid and transforms him into the kid who can bridge the gap between Vikings and dragons and becomes friends with the last of his kind, developing a beautiful relationship that changes their world. That's all that needs to be done. You could even take the romance aspect between Hiccup and Astrid out, and it would still be a great movie. The romance between Astrid and Hiccup just makes it a little bit more fun. Sen says, yeah, I don't have a lot of hope for this version, and I understand why people feel that way. Really, I do. Art says, I like to see them do a Harry Potter anime movie. Now, that would be interesting. They're right now working on a Harry Potter show. They're going to transform each book into a season within the series. My hope, if they're going to do that, they need to make each season grow with the size of book. So seasons 1 and 2 should be like 7 episodes, maybe 8 episodes. Book 3 should be 10. And then after that, each book needs to be at least 12 episodes, if not more, long. So that way we get all the details from the Harry Potter books. Why? Because I want my Peeves the Poltergeist, for crying out loud. He's one of the best parts of the books. Amazing Gamer 111 says one side looks more promising than the live action Lion King. Other side, this feels way too soon. I appreciate the love for this adaptation, but moving a little fast, aren't we, DreamWorks? Amazing Gamer 111, amen. I agree with that. Really, I do. Art says, do a reverse. I'm Omega says, I check it out. Okay. Totally Tommy, I don't know how to make two of my characters get along. A somewhat creepy character and a chaotic one. Totally Tommy, put a pin in that question. We are going to come back to it. I'm going to be asking you for a whole lot more details. So be ready to put those details there in the chat. I'm Omega. I'd rather watch Kamen Rider. Yeah. Hannah says, but I like the ship. Yes. Astrid and Hiccup, absolutely cute. Wouldn't want to take it out myself personally. I'm just saying that the story is good enough. You could take it out and you really wouldn't lose much. But the romance aspect between Astrid and Hiccup really does do a lot to help elevate the characters in the story. And especially just for that beautiful scene at the end of the third movie with the families reuniting. Oh, so well done. Arts says, to be honest, I think Saphira from Eragon 2006 is more convincing. But I love that movie. I know it's not very well liked, but I don't care. Okay, Arts, I'm going to say something incredibly controversial. It is this. The movie Eragon is the way that the book should have been written, and the book is the way the movie should have been done. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous to say, but when I watch the movie Eragon, it feels like what the book ought to have been. A straightforward boy is going to become the hero, bonds with the dragon, goes on an epic quest. And it actually feels pretty original. When you read the book is ripping off everything. We've got Jedi. We've got dragons from the Dragon Riders of Pern. We have blatant ripoffs of J.R.R. Tolkien. We have ripoffs, apparently, of the Belgrade. I've not read that series, but I've been told he rips it off a whole lot. He rips off Harry Potter. He rips off everything, which is okay. A 14-year-old boy writing his first novel. And actually, I really do enjoy the book. The first book especially. I really do enjoy it, but it just is so silly when you stop to think about it, and it feels like something that Hollywood would do, ripping off all these other stories and just jam-packing it into one thing. Rather than trying to create an original story like what the movie adaptation tries to do. So, that is my controversial take on Eragon. TV account, I think there's a rumor that the Twilight books are getting an animated series. Oh my gosh, what? I think I'd heard that there was an option for Twilight to become a show. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But with the way that Hollywood has basically said they're not going to do anything new for the next little while, I understand that will probably happen. So it would be funny if they took the movie in a whole different direction than the original movie. What if Toothless was evil and the movie revolved around Hiccup trying to kill the evil black dragon? Ayo. That would be fascinating. That would be a very, very different story. And I don't want Toothless to be the villain. But hey. The Amazing Gamer 111 says it's been a rocky few field months for live action adaptation. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Minecraft, and How to Train Your Dragon being the biggest eye openers in recent memory. I am looking forward to Sonic the Hedgehog Part 3. I think that'll be really good. Henry replies, oof, the Minecraft movie. I have no relationship to Minecraft at all. I have hardly played the game. So I have no connection to it whatsoever. I don't even know most of the stuff that's happening on screen when watching it, when watching the trailer. So I really am not the person to talk Minecraft with. Unfortunately. Arts, I think Murtagh saved the series. Murtagh was a really good character. Probably one of the most grounded characters. I lost interest in Eragon about halfway through the series, him as a character. I really like his cousin. whose name is suddenly escaping me. I want to say Braum, but Braum is the old wizard. Rowan. Rowan is a great character with a great journey, and he makes sense. He's a small town, small time man. Roran. Okay, not Rowan. Roran. Thank you, Arts, for correcting me. Roran is a great character in how he grows to become this legend, even more so than Eragon. And I love that. He's such a cool character. He's indomitable. And I will admit that there were moments in the original draft for my Legend of the Ten Lords series. I did kind of rip off a little bit of what Christopher Paolini did with Roran. However, almost all of that got chucked out upon future edits. So that little side plot didn't survive. There we go. Bobby says, what? The live action trailer shown here seems so much like, let's make them watch How to Train Your Dragon again. Yes. Go back and watch the originals. Love them. TV account. Trailers make or break a movie. TV account, you've got a point, but that's not always the case. If you go back and find one of the original trailers for the Fellowship of the Ring, oh, it's so bad. Oh, it's so bad. It's so cringe-inducing. And yet the Fellowship of the Ring is such an amazing movie, totally opposite of the trailer, and is one of the most beloved movies of it within the fantasy genre. So the trailer doesn't always make or break a movie, but it definitely has a big impact. There were a lot of people who were very trepidatious about the Fellowship of the Ring because the trailer for it was so awful. Totally Tommy says, I had voice actors, but I ended up using dialogue boxes with SFX. Hey, that's kind of like what Toby Fox did with Undertale and with Deltarune. I really feel like if he had wanted to, he could have done voices for Deltarune, but the different sounds that are made towards the typeset as it comes out is beautiful. It already communicates so much about who these characters are just by the sound alone, then combined with their dialogue through text. So you can say a whole lot without needing to use the voice of another person, especially if you're working on a budget. The Amazing Gamer 111, Sonic 3 is for sure the winner so far, taking advantage of the movies being their own canon while still keeping pieces of what made the original game so special, which is something I think more big screen adaptations should do. I agree with you. I'm Omega, same with the Transformers one. And I'm Omega, yes, especially for with Transformers 1, yes. I agree. I had no interest to see Transformers 1 until I heard a reviewer that I trusted say that it was actually really good. And so I went and I saw it with my oldest sister and with my youngest nephew. And it was so much fun to watch. Holy cow. Such a good movie. It's a movie that can be appreciated by kids and by adults. And it's incredible how they flirted with that line of almost going too far in terms of maturity, but never really going too far. That was, and the voice acting was great. The writing was great. It really, I think if you know more about Transformers lore, it makes a little bit more sense. But it was still a good movie. I could follow along with everything. I enjoyed it, enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the action. There was some real heart there, especially at the end. Holy cow, that was good. Arts says Sonic 1's first trailer is a good example of try again. Yes. Oh my gosh, that trailer was so bad in so many ways. I talked about this once with one of my sisters, and she says that she's convinced that they purposefully made that first trailer bad to garner a whole bunch of talk about the movie, and that they had always intended to do the special effects all over again, that they'd already had in the can. But a Hollywood insider from Canada said no. He's like, no, that did not happen at all. Paramount had to shell out extra money to bring all of the VFX artists back to the studio to work on it all over again. Excuse me. And that's why it took another 6 months before the movie came out, was because they had to do all the VFX all over again in 6 months. And those poor guys got overworked. It was not a pretty thing. And what's great is that the fans rewarded the studio and the movie by giving it so much attention that it's done really, really well. So that's how we're able to get a third movie, because I went back and did it all over again. But man, I hope I can go for voice actors and have good chemistry about it and all. Amen. I hope you have a good time. And it says, goes to show they hate Sonic. I would say that they hate Sonic. I think that the studio made a really big miscalculation with trying to step away from cartoon Sonic. And that's a big problem, is that you have too many adults in positions of power in Hollywood who don't like cartoons for whatever reason, and don't realize that cartoons can do a whole lot. And it's been a problem now for decades and decades that people have tried to get away from cartoons. And it's just thanks to people who love what cartoons can do that it's continued to stick around as a medium. Now, TV account raises their hand to ask question. What's the topic of this stream about? Excellent question. It's about problems and solutions, questions and answers. So with that being said, you guys have already given me your feedback about How to Train Your Dragon. We got a good number of people here, and Totally Tommy has already presented a problem. So hopefully we can start providing answers. Now then, Totally Tommy, if you're still there, I need you to please give me more about these two characters that you want to have get along. Let's have a look at these characters. Let's try to get to know them a little bit better, and let's see what we can do to bring them together and form a good, strong bond. That is going to be our goal for this very first writer's problem in question. And if you also happen to have any sort of questions for your own stories or for your characters or your world building, then please sound off in the chat, and we'll see what we can do to find some good answers to help you out. And later on, I will be presenting you guys with some problems of my own. And I want to see if you guys can help me figure out what I should do. Because I'm facing my own brick wall of writing problems. So I'm hoping you guys can help me out. All right. So as Totally Tommy is hopefully giving us some more details about his characters, let me quickly read what you guys have also posted right here. The Amazing Gamer 111 says, media where the fans of its existing franchise would get more out of it, but being made in a way where general audiences can enjoy it too, are works of pure genius. I aspire to accomplish that someday. Amen. That is what we want to hear. In fact, if you make a story really good, it will reach its audience. Now, granted, there is always the element of timing and the element of luck. There are so many great stories out there that just haven't gotten as much love or any love as they should. That doesn't diminish how well written they are. But if you can make a great story and it's given the chance, it will find its audience. I guarantee that. Hannah Heaven says it's pretty sad. Animation is for all ages. TV account says, Hannah, tell my mom that. Hey, you know what? TV account and to Hannah, here's the thing is that I believe that if you can find a good animated movie that speaks to what a person is actually interested in, that they will want to sit down and watch said animated movie. My oldest sister hated anime for years. The only anime that she liked were ones that she liked ironically because we grew up with some really weird 80s anime recorded on VHS. And she's like, yeah, I just don't like anime. It's so weird. It makes me feel uncomfortable, and those big eyes and high-pitched voices. And so I thought about like what she might want to watch. And I eventually chose to show her Howl's Moving Castle. Because Howl's Moving Castle, while it's funny and has some ridiculous moments, it's far more grounded than you might expect. The music is gorgeous. The voice acting is great. And it's a very aesthetically pleasing movie to watch. So I begged her to sit down with me and watch Howl's Moving Castle. And by the end of it, she was all like, is there another one of those movies? I'm like, no, there's only one. She's like, oh. I'm like, but the studio made multiple movies that you might be interested in. And that got her then eventually to watch The Cat Returns, which she found to be enjoyable. And I don't think she actually liked any of the other Studio Ghibli movies, but it opened her up to the possibility that there were good anime. And since then, she's watched stuff like Spy Family, Comey Can't Communicate, and I think she's even watched a little bit of oh crud, I'm beginning to forget the name of this anime. It's a Japanese retelling of Cinderella, which is really, really good. Set at the turn of the 20th century. Dang it. Oh, My Happy Marriage. If you haven't seen My Happy Marriage, it's such a good show. It's so good. Definitely worth watching. Let's see here. TV count. Whoa, Fabio. I'll put this here before I move on. Game. Random civilians, powers are commonplace, get mind controlled until, wait, they're so strong. And more, it's like an if villain was smart, dude heading straight to the nuke button. Okay. Okay, Totally Tommy's finally responded. I can't really think at night, so give me a moment. Hey, Totally Tommy, if you're finding yourself struggling, don't push yourself too hard. I will come back to your question here in just a moment, and we'll already start talking about it, at least in the abstract, before we start getting some of your details. The Amazing Gamer 111 says, I think something like The Wild Robot would be a good contender for that scenario. Definitely what I describe as a perfect family film. I don't ever cry at movies, but this one actually got me. I still need to see it. I know, I have sinned, but it looks so good. Oh my gosh, the one of the trailers got me actually feeling a little bit emotional. So I'm looking forward to it. Hannah says, wow, wish I did the same for Sailor Moon, but few of my family members think it too girly. Sigh. Well, that's because Sailor Moon is very girly. Doesn't mean it's bad, but it knows its audience and it plays to that audience pretty strongly. Let's see here. Thinking of an anime that more people might actually get into. Always depends on the personality of said person. I've got a friend who I'm trying to eventually convince to sit down and watch one particular anime, and I'm right now juggling if it should be Dororo. Probably not Dororo, now that I actually really stopped to think about it. Though Dororo is so freaking good. And Demon Slayer is also really good, but sometimes that's not exactly what people are looking for. So you just really got to know the person that you're trying to recommend something to and figure out what story might actually work well with their interests and their mindset. TV account says, I don't know if you read my problem. It was on the community post. Oh, thank you, TV account. I will head on over there so that way I can address that as well. Once I've talked a little bit about Totally Tommy's question. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've got it right there. All right, so let me quickly, TV account, before I get to yours, I want to scroll back on up and find Totally Tommy's question from earlier. Okay. Because he was specific about what kinds of characters he wanted to get along. Okay, here we go. So the question from Totally Tommy. I don't know how to make two of my characters get along. A somewhat creepy character and a chaotic one. Okay then. Excellent. Oh, I love chaos characters. It's fun for me to write creepy characters, but they tend to also put me into a bad headspace. Okay, take a drink of water. All right. So generally speaking, and now then granted, Totally Tommy, this is just my approach. And for anyone else, again, this is just my approach. You can see if you agree with this, and if not, then you can come up with your own based on like saying, okay, Lars said this and I didn't like it. So what's the opposite, or what's a better route? A chaotic character and a creepy character need a reason to work together, because chaos actually does not like creepy unless they are in the same person. And I say this because if you think about like friend groups or like cliques at school and whatnot, we might tend to think that like the loners that gather together, or some of the goth people, or some of the weird skaters might just be like a really weird blend again of like creepy and chaotic. But if you begin to get to know people, unless a person is themselves creepy and chaotic people don't like being around creepy people, and creepy people feel really put off by chaotic people, because generally creepy people tend to be a little bit more isolated, a little bit more introverted, whereas chaotic people, even if they're introverts, they have an extrovert side to them that's just bursting to get out. They want to do things. They want to be recognized. They want to do something wild. They want to do something unexpected for whatever kind of reason. Whether it just be too much energy, or because they really wanted to try something and they're willing to do it no matter the cost, whatever it be, creepy and chaotic normally don't go together. So if you want a creepy character and a chaotic character to even begin to get along, there needs to be a motivation for them to be together in the first place. Whether it be that they're assigned to the same school project, one is a creepy cop, the other one's a chaotic cop, and they've been put onto an unsolvable murder just to get them out of the way. Or maybe they're both after, and you can actually take this right from the movie Jingle All the Way, they're both after the same toy for their kids. They need to have a motivation that brings the two of them together and forces them to work together. From there, once these characters are forced to interact with each other, they need to get to know who the other one is. And they need to realize that the other one has good qualities that make them tolerable to be around. We might even be good acquaintances. And then build up the relationship from there. So have a reason for them to even be together in the first place. Then get them to help to recognize what is good about the other person, and then build up the relationship from that point. If you can do that, that's already an excellent starting base for bringing together two characters who normally wouldn't be. Now, Totally Tommy does provide a little bit more information. The first character I was talking about is in the game menu, talking to you before you've even been shown in the story. The second one also talks to the player. They refer to you, gods, even though I'm guessing they refer to you as gods, even though they're gods. Interesting. Okay. So again, Totally Tommy, that's a very interesting setup right there. What is it? So then I would think then that you'd want to make sure that you're thinking about, okay, so what is it that would bring these two characters together? This is great because they were arguing because of a situation. Excellent. So there's a situation that's brought them together. Fantastic. So you already then have a pretty good idea, Tommy. You capitalize on that situation. What has brought them together? Why are they arguing? And what actually keeps them there to continue communicating? And how might they then come to some sort of consensus or agreement? Work on that. And I think then that you can start to build up that good relationship between a chaotic and a creepy character. So I hope that helps. And if you have any more details that you'd like to share, then go on ahead. Let's see here. So Hannah and Amazing Gamer, I will come back to your guys's posts here in just a moment. I did say that I would also address TV accounts question. So TV account posted this on our community post. Problem: I wake up at odd hours and I can't fall asleep so easily. Solution: use that time to work on my stories and actually do them in peace. Other problem: my mom doesn't like the idea and freaks out if she sees me not falling back to sleep. I hate it. Solution? Okay then. So TV account. First of all, sleep is really good. If there is a medical reasoning why you find yourself waking up late at night, what I would suggest is make sure that you're getting the proper support and advice from medical professionals to help you out. And and they can help put you onto a good sleep schedule. However, if this isn't a medical thing and you're like so many other people that just simply wake up and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm up again. What I would suggest is this, and really, TV account, please take my word at this. This is actually something that you can definitely put to good use. I want you to have a notebook, easily accessible, right next to your bed. And what I want you to do when you wake up at night and you're all like, oh my gosh, I have like creativity brimming right now, but I also got to get back to bed. What I want you to do is I want you to spend some time before you got to go back to sleep. You got to hit the hay because you got to get your rest. Open up your notebook and start taking notes. Already, like, write down like that immediate inspiration that you're getting. If you're like, ooh, like I'm already having inspiration about this character, write that character's name at the top of the page and just start putting down everything that you can that's coming to you about that character. If you have an idea of an event that you want to have happen in your story, write down the name or the possible name of that event and start writing out the details. Once you have filled a page, maybe even you're feeling really bold and you do 2 pages of notes about a character, about an event, about a relationship in the book, about a major plot point, a world building point. Once you've done that, then please put the book to the side and then try to get your rest, because rest is, again, very important. But that way, then you can get your rest and you also have a book right there immediately within reach that you can just start writing out stuff. And yes, it might seem really sloppy when you wake up in the morning, you're like, what did I write again? But by having that inspiration already there on the page, it is something then that at any point in time, you can go back, you can open up the book, and you have all that information for you to use when you are ready to use it. And when you're on vacation, then, hey, you have my permission, though your family might not like it. At least you got my permission to stay up a little bit later and write to your heart's content. That would be my solution, TV account. That's what I would suggest. Have a notebook there by your bed, so that way when you wake up, you can write down your inspiration, write down your ideas, and then hopefully try to move on to sleep. Totally Tommy says, I actually kind of ship them. It's like cruisy, enemies to lovers, non-binary, ex-girl, chaotic, and somewhat creepy. Well, say Totally Tommy, I'm glad that you're shipping your own characters, that hopefully it means that you're developing a good relationship between them. Again, just like as it is with Cruzy or with any good ship, make sure that you are properly developing those characters and giving them not just simply like, oh, a reason. Oh, I love them. They work so well together. Let's smoosh them together in a ship. Properly develop their relationship, properly develop who they are and how they get together. And then bravo, you've got something great on your hands. Let's see here. So coming back on up here. Hannah said, speak of character. Remember when you say, when you read my script, that my character didn't connect with you? Can you please tell me what you mean? Because I try way too hard for my characters to have charm. Okay, so Hannah, one of the things to keep in mind is that charm and relatability, accessibility are in their own way subjective and don't always work. So, like, for instance, one of the characters that I wrote that I really did enjoy writing for The Legend of the Ten Lords, Jessica, is a high school girl who's a cheerleader, bit of a preppy, popular girl, and I made her a closet nerd because I knew a bunch of closet nerd jocks in high school who were really great people, and some of them girls that you would never have expected to be nerds. So I wrote that, and it was relatable to me because, hey, I knew people like that. However, when I then presented my story to one of my best friends, she, as one of the awkward outsider girls who was never a jock, never preppy, and was very open about her nerdiness, she's like, this character doesn't speak to me. Other than that, when I read her, I think about all the girls who bullied me back in high school. It makes me angry to read her on the page, and I like that the villains capture her and torture her. And I'm like, oh, that's dark. So yeah, for one of my best friends, she didn't like Jessica. For other people who have read the books, they're like, I really do like Jessica. She's a kind of character that I feel like I could have gotten along with, or I actually knew someone like her back in high school. And so in terms of being able to connect with a character, it will be subjective. You can't please everyone with a character. If you try too hard, you'll end up pleasing no one. You end up just creating a blank slate, and blank slate characters suck. Instead, Hannah, if I recall correctly, when talking about characters connecting and getting to know their charm, for me, one of the things that I needed to know more about your characters, I needed to actually know better who they were. I needed to get a sense of their personality. I needed to get a sense of how they really communicated with other people. And that just takes a little bit more time to develop that. And again, I'll need to go back actually, Hannah, and read over some of your stuff and maybe reassess my previous critique. But making a character relatable is about ultimately helping the audience come to know who that person is, know their strengths, their weaknesses, their personality, their relationships, their motivation. And that's just a process of it's a process of time within the story, helping to hook the audience. Let me collect my thoughts a little bit better here, because I'm beginning to ramble. Let me use as an example Kelsier from Mistborn. When you're introduced to Kelsier in the first Mistborn book, you're not exactly sure who this person is, and that's okay. That's okay if you don't immediately know who a certain character is. Kelsier is not even the POV character of the first chapter. Or he's the stranger who comes on in. Everyone's like, oh, Kelsier, the survivor of Hathsin. That says absolutely nothing to the reader. They don't know what Hathsin is. They don't know why Kelsier is so important. All they know is that Kelsier is a ne'er-do-well who decides he's going to murder some people that night. And he screws up a lot of people's lives in the process. And he seems overly confident. And you're all like, who is this guy, this bum? And then a couple of chapters later, once he comes to realize like that he's on a quest for revenge for the death of his wife, that he's going to overthrow the system that has brought down all these other characters they've gotten to know into slavery. He basically wants to free the slaves and knock down the noble system that has done all these horrible things. He's going to get revenge. And on top of that, when he's with the right people, he's super charismatic. Kelsier became my favorite character. But that took time. It took a few chapters of really getting to see his personality truly shine through, see his relationships, and see how he interacted with the world and get to know him. So creating that charm and creating that relatability takes time. So Hannah, don't feel so discouraged. That's definitely something that we can talk about in a future live stream. I think it'd be great to have a roundtable discussion about that, about how to properly introduce a really interesting character who makes people want to know more about them. And in that process, that character becomes more relatable. So I hope that helps you out, Hannah. I hope that answers your question. The Amazing Gamer had also originally written a temporary alliance may be in order, but the calmer person would need to make it worth the wilder person's while. That's my take anyway. In answer to Totally Tommy's question. Thank you, Amazing Gamer, for putting in your answer. I really like that. Okay, let me catch up with what people have written here. Rubens, I'm here to boost the YouTube algorithm and say the quote of the day. If you break 2 world records at the same time, you broke 3 because you are the first to break 2 at the same time. Rubens, that is a motivational word of wisdom, and I love it. Fabio, Man, my Dave Bright dude really is chaotic, and Burnt Flame is the stoic beside him. Yet I somehow got type of brain blast or something. Why the people around them wouldn't see them as they truly are. Rubens, the best dialogue I ever thought about was literally character 1. Hey, you too strong. Explain why. Character 2. He fused with Kami to become stronger. Character 1. What the freak is a Kami? Character 2. Basically God. Character 1. But I'm still here. Character 3. You really believe that hype? You really believe you're hyped that much? Character 1. I am the hype. Truly a TFS time? Sorry, my brain's just not computing that. Totally Tommy, and one of my friends who made the music shipped simply the rude one in my story, X the awkward one, because their personalities are easier to understand. They get along later on. Okay, that's cool. TV account. It's more like trying to figure out find uninterrupted time to do my work on my comic, mostly the drawing part, while not feeling like scum to the rest of my family. Well, TV account, it's complicated to explain, but it feels like they're more annoyed or upset that I would try to ask for time and space to work on my comic. Well, TV account, the best that I can do, best that I can suggest, since I'm not there and I don't wholly understand your situation, but I do sympathize with it, is that you have that awkward conversation. And I say awkward because it's how it feels, especially at the beginning. And I can say that as the guy who came back to my family after spending 7 years in college, getting 3 degrees, and then saying, I want to write, which has nothing to do with any of the degrees I got, but saying, I want to write. And my family being all like, but you went through all that work. You did all this stuff. What? And it's just like, yeah, but this is what I want to do. And if you can have that kind of a conversation and be mature about it, I firmly do believe that even if they don't feel very supportive of you at first, you will have at least said your piece, which is very important. But also that you will help them to better understand you. And in time, you will have that understanding and that space and time to work on your projects, to work on your art. And art does require a certain sacrifice of time. So I'd say just keep working at it, but be honest and be kind about what you want to do. And I do believe that you will be given that consideration. That's my take anyway. Okay. Fabio says the threats just disappear around that bright dude, and brightness is around him at those times. There were blinding lights all over the place with him, but not anymore. Guess Flame's one of those kids. His burning spirit truly tamed that guy. Not all close to what actually happened. I see. Hannah says, that makes sense. Thank you so much. Now I get it. Well, I'm happy I could help. All right, the Amazing Gamers got a question right here. One issue I'm having is scripting an action chase scene between protagonist and antagonist on a passenger train from back to the front. But just can't shoot the protagonist because for plot reasons. They need to remain alive. That and the track's construction aren't finished. My issue is, how can I fill that small 3 or so minute space without it feeling like filler? Oh, Amazing Gamer, thank you so much for giving me that amazing question, because I do love me a good action scene. Let me quickly take a drink of water. That feels good. And I also realize I'm about to run out of footage here real quick. So let me grab up. Let's see here. What should I do? For the next footage? So we'll go to captured footage. And you know what? Let's do Ori. All right, we're gonna do some Ori. Okay. So, okay. So when it comes to making an action sequence that doesn't feel like it's filler for the next 2 to 3 minutes, amazing gamer, here is what I want you to consider. What is the setup for this for this moment, this chase on the train? Because if you don't set up a fight or an action sequence, then kind of what's the point? So there needs to be good reason. Who is this antagonist chasing the protagonist? Why does the protagonist choose of all places to go a train, especially a train on an unfinished track? Saith what? If you can build up the reason for why that's going to happen, then you can make it work. The next thing to do, beyond that, is of course then a good execution of this action scene. It's great to think about how, okay, then the villain, for plot reasons, can't actually shoot the protagonist. However, that then, as in the words of Old Man McGucket, it feels a bit contrived, because it's supposed to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, why the antagonist just can't simply pull out a gun and cap the protagonist in the back of the head, and then the story's done with, people will start calling that out, and of course make a big stink about it, and it really also in a certain case won't be as much fun to write if it doesn't make any sense. So what I would suggest is that, and again, I don't fully know everything that's going into this action scene, but one of the things that I would suggest doing, and you could have some real fun with it, is that the protagonist goes onto this train. The train is not supposed to go onto the unfinished track, but ends up doing so by accident. You can come up with the fun accidental reasons for why that is. And there are passengers on the train. It's a busy train with chaos now that villains and heroes are fighting on it, meaning now that the villain just can't get a clear shot. And if you go that route, then already right there, just simple logic dictates that the hero can avoid easily getting shots. So that's my take right there. The last thing is this. So you need to have the setup, you need to have the proper execution. The other thing is this, is that there needs to be consequences for this chase scene on the train. And if there are no consequences, well, then fine. But it's fun. But it's fun that's not exactly leading. Best put it, it's fun. It's fun that's not necessarily leading to anything of any value within the story. You want to avoid that. So proper setup, make sense of why the protagonist and the antagonist are where they are, and then of course execute the conflict in an intelligent way, and then consequences. There has to be a reason for. There has to be a reason, but there has to be something that the hero and the villain both have to put up with now as a result of their time on the train. So, sorry, that was a little bit rambly right there, but I hope that helps. Also, funny enough, I have my own really crazy story of actually being chased on a train. This was when I was living in Germany. There was this drunk guy, and I don't know what it was, but my entire time in Germany, I was a magnet for really crazy drunks. And there was this drunk guy who saw me at the far end of this massive train station, and he pointed at me, and I knew in a moment that there was trouble coming. And this guy was on the other end of the train station, on the other side of all the tracks. He pointed at me and started running in the most ridiculous fashion you can imagine. running to get to the stairs, across a bridge, and down onto the other side of the train station to come after me. And there's this train coming. And so I hopped onto the train. The guy hopped onto the train as well and began chasing me through the train. And so it was full on like pushing people on his side, getting around people, closing doors on him. And then at a stop, all of the doors are automated. Once they close, they're closed. So I stopped, waited for the guy to come almost right up to me, and then I jumped through the doors right as the doors began closing. So the doors closed on him, and he got stuck. And I watched, I kid you not, the guy ran to the back of the train where there was a big window and began beating on the window, pointing and shouting at me as the train pulled him away like some cartoon character. Yeah, a real life train chase. Hey-o. Okay. So the Amazing Gamer says there's an in-universe reason explained by the antagonist is superior why the main can't be killed. And the setting is a dystopian Wall-E world. The train itself is electric and is jump-started. Ooh, okay. I like that. So kind of like almost a bit of a junkyard situation is what I'm imagining. Via the protagonist getting a drop on the antagonist. Lore stuff is something I can't explain too much without spoilers. Okay. I can accept that. But again, thinking about set up, the execution, and then the consequences of that particular chase. If there are no consequences to any fight or action sequence, then it has no reason really to exist other than to be filler. And if it's filler, it's not fulfilling. Tommy, go really, really up. You missed quite a lot. What's the purpose? All right. Okay. Tolly Tom says the Root character is an actor, a dead one in hell. When humans visit hell, they see them as a lackey, a tool. He died in old times. Okay. A little bit more interesting stuff right there. So as an actor who people might not like or might not particularly respect, finding someone who's willing to show them any sort of respect is definitely a good way of developing a relationship, and sometimes even being able to find that respect. That can be a great character building moment for the characters involved in that relationship. All right. Bobby says the characters in the game I want to make all know that they are in a game. It was a big scientific discovery that didn't get silenced at all. Just a fact. Man, I am aware stories can be too self-aware. I do worry of this one having that. Fabio, if you want a story that might give you some inspiration on this count, I highly suggest checking out the manhwa Cage Murderous Level Up. I'll put that here. Cage Murderous Level Up. I intend to one day actually do a video on this particular manhwa. This one shocked me in many ways because I'm not someone who tends to go for like revenge porn stories. And what I mean by that is that stories that are like gratuitous in the process of getting revenge, where they just go so over the top. It's so ridiculous. You're like, really? We didn't need this. Not at all. There's plenty of stories like that. And that's what I thought that Cage Murderous Level Up was going to be. But holy cow. While there's plenty of revenge in that story, it is so well done. And it's a very self-aware story that looks into the very toxic mentalities of gamers. Because you have a video game that has connected the entire known universe. So you have humans and aliens from all these different cultures and backgrounds interacting in this VR game. And the game serves all different kinds of purposes of bringing different nationalities together, but it also serves to to really cause just some horrendous things to happen. And it's a very fascinating story. Definitely worth checking out. Let's see here. TV Count says, so coming back to what TV Count was dealing with, it almost feels like I'll never be fully understood when it comes to this sort of thing unless I show her it can actually pay the bills. And TV Count, trust me, again, that's something that I can definitely understand that, because it is difficult. And being an artist doesn't pay the bills very easily at all. And that's the truth of the matter. I think that one of the best things that you can do in that particular circumstance, and I've had this conversation with loads of others, is that one of the best things you can do is say, hey, look, like, I understand the situation that I find myself in regards to how hard it is to be a successful artist, and that it doesn't usually pay the bills, but it's something that I really, really want to do. This is something that brings me a lot of happiness and a lot of fulfillment. So I will work hard doing a good, proper job, because that's just a smart thing to do. However, I am working so that way I can be an artist. And that's being honest. That's being mature, realistic, and also still being true to yourself. So I hope that you understand that, and maybe that approach will help you out a little bit more. So something to think on. Let's see here. Hannah says I'm talking about the train scene. Yeah, so let's talk more about the train scene. Let's see here. The Amazing Gamer says, and of course they know the track's dangerous, but as the antagonist has destroyed their previous form of transportation when catching up to the antagonist's position as they're being hunted, they know they can't outrun the antagonist and have to bite the bullet and take the train to get out of the area ASAP, as on foot they'd be captured immediately. Hey, yo, Amazing Gamer 111, I like that. Very good. Keep rolling with it. Totally Tommy says, I'll credit you in the credits for helping. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, and then corrections about manhwa, Korean manga. Hey, Roblox is here. Woohoo! Great to see you here, Roblox. All right. So I believe. Oh, wait a second. Dorcas Daydreams. Sorry, Dorcas. I almost forgot your comment right here. Just got back from a screenplay reading. What have I missed? We've been talking. We were talking about Dandadan. We were talking about the live action for How to Train Your Dragon, and since then we've been discussing different problems and hopefully some solutions that help people out with their different writing problems. ISO, I do have a problem. I went back through what I have for my story, Fable of the Hunter, and realized that the relationship between Hunter and Lynn, protagonist and love interest, doesn't make sense. Oh boy. Okay. Well, yeah. So don't feel too bad. We've all been there. Yeah, and actually, are you willing to listen to some suggestions that might seem really, really bad? If so, here's one of the things that I would suggest. If you have a character who is supposed to fall in love with another, but you're like, this doesn't make any sense at all, might I suggest another love interest, one who will come first, as it were. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes your characters need a little bit more time than you were expecting to really come together to be an item. That absolutely happens. And so if you find yourself in that particular case, what if Lynn or what if Hunter is in another relationship or trying to get into another relationship? And you take a little bit of time to explore what that is like. in order to then kind of promote and show how the relationship between Lynn and Hunter is actually the far better option for the two of them. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea, because I actually used that again for my Legend of the Ten Lords series. Originally, it was just supposed to be uh, uh, Ben and Jessica getting together, and that was what I had my heart set on. However, as I got deeper into Jessica's story, I began to realize that she would not, based on her experiences, especially in the second and third books, she would not have any reason to get together with Ben. I had written myself into a corner, and the only way out of it was to provide, at least for Ben, another love interest to chase that would actually help him in many ways mature to be the proper love interest for Jessica, while I then spent a little bit more time giving Jessica the character development that she needed to be the proper main love interest. And I'm trying to say all of that without giving away spoilers. But that was a very interesting challenge to take. So yeah, I would recommend trying out another love interest, and here's the thing: you don't even actually have to go with that plan. I would recommend it at least in terms of experimenting with what another relationship might provide for those characters, so that way you can see maybe what their relationship lacks, and so that way then you can write their relationship better. Maybe you don't need a third wheel, a third person, but at least thinking about what it would be like to have them in another relationship could help you find what you're missing. And so I hope that helps. And then again, that's just one idea right there. You don't have to be married to it, but figuring out what their relationship needs to make it work out is the best way of overcoming the nonsense. I missed this from Totally Tommy. My story is a psychological horror and somewhat comedic. That rude character mentions gifts for a joke, even though they never saw technology. I just worked on the game menu today or yesterday. It's midnight. Okay, well, that's awesome that you're working on it. And it sounds like it's coming along. I'm really happy that you're working on this, Totally Tommy. And I hope it works out really well for you. Okay, so let me now catch up with some of the stuff you guys have been putting in here. Since I went on my little pedantic rant. Okay. Fabius, in this manhwa, are the characters inverse ones, like not players inverse? So, Fabio, you have characters who are both players, and then you have characters who are NPCs. And one of the best characters is an NPC. She is so freaking amazing, and her story is also one of the saddest, unfortunately. But yeah, you got a combination of both. There's a lot to it. Again, highly recommend checking it out. The Amazing Gamer says, of course, I have a good idea for the climax where the protagonist jumps the train from the front of the train in time. Meanwhile, the antagonist takes the fall, let's say. Slightly reminiscent of the trailer falling off the cliff in Jurassic Park Lost World. Ooh. Which renders the antagonist ineffective until the next chapter. I like that. Good consequences. And I like that moment from The Lost World as well. Totally Tommy says, the setting dialogue from the creepy god character, hello player, the volume configuring is currently not working. He recommends you to not important. There's a text limit. Hold on. But he is referring to an image of the villain covering his ears. Interesting. ISO, that does remind me of something I realized earlier. I have a character later on in the story that I feel the audience would like more than Lynn. I feel like it would be an NXV popular when it won't happen. Oh, oof. Okay, then. ISO again. I'll say this as as someone who's experienced this kind of a writing conundrum. Just because, let's see here. How best to put this? Unless you are absolutely wedded to one OTP, you don't have to necessarily stick to one particular relationship. You always can change things up. And this is something that I realized, actually not with the Legend of the Ten Lords, but with my story Whitefire, where there was one relationship where I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be like this, it's going to be so great. And then as I was outlining the series and outlining the different characters and their character arcs and how this all fit into the plot, there was one character who really, like, in her own way in my head kind of came out and she's like, hey, like, don't forget me, like, I actually love this guy. And I'm like, holy crap, you do? Okay, then, well, I need to change some stuff now. Right, even if I'm not exactly giving you a happy ending, I need to respect that there's this potential right here between you, and see where that goes. So that's kind of, I mean, that'll be up to you to decide what you want to do. But that's something that I would recommend ISO playing around with a little bit, and seeing what that relationship between that one character and Hunter might give you in terms of insight for helping make the relationship with Lynn a whole lot better. Okay. TV account. Do you think fan works are a great way to practice storytelling or a terrible death trap? TV account, it can be both. It depends on what you yourself decide to do. I've used fan fiction as a way of exploring storytelling ideas and world building ideas, as well as trying to work on dialogue. And it can be a whole lot of fun. However, if you intend on creating your own stuff, you can't stay in the world of fan fiction for very long. And that's just something that needs to be accepted and learned. The Amazing Gamer says, I plan to get back on writing Sunday, so I'll come back to this part of the stream to catch up on all the advice. So thanks. Hey, you're very welcome. Fabio, I see. In my dream game, the NPCs all know that they're in a game, but they're still NPCs. They have their history, still civilians at the end of the day, with powers in day-to-day life. Okay. It's most addressed by ones interested in bugs and glitches. And don't worry, there's a fail-safe for any of them clipping out of bounds. Some of them might clip out of bounds to get back home from being lost. All right. Totally Tommy says, the setting options creeps me out. Even though I made it, it feels like you're not supposed to be here. Oh, interesting. I look forward to seeing how that all turns out. ISO, oh, that's definitely a suggestion. I'm actually going to think on that. Excellent. Not a bad deal. Make the story a bit more romance focused, equally romance and plot driven. Well, it all depends on what you yourself wish to do. Sometimes, yeah, a story ends up being a little bit more romance focused than it probably should be. And I'm definitely one that believes that unless romance is absolutely integral to the plot, it should be used more as a spice for what you want to do rather than the main dish, unless you're writing a romance. The Amazing Gamer says, I can see people asking the same thing about my protagonist, as when working together, they share a friendship similar to Dipper and Pacifica. Why aren't they together by the end? Well, shippers are going to ship, The Amazing Gamer. And this comes back to, at the very beginning of this live stream, media literacy. Media literacy dictates that you don't always need to have people be in a relationship in order for their relationship to be fulfilling. Funny how that goes. The god speaks to the villain like the demons. They are about to tell him later on, when the villain dies, the truth that's meant to scare the player. So fan fiction is practice then, says I'm Omega. Yes, that's the way that I like to treat fan fiction. I used to hate the idea of fan fiction, which was very hypocritical of me because one of the very first things that I tried to do as a writer was fan fiction. I was just very embarrassed of it. But I've learned over time to respect fan fiction, and that fan fiction can be very rewarding in its own right, as well as help you learn the things that you need to actually learn in order to make your story the best it can be. So fan fiction can do a whole lot for you. Just if you want to actually be able to, if you're looking to write your own stories, then just realize that you can't always rely on fan fiction. So at some point you're going to have to move on, and that's a tricky thing. There's plenty of people who started off with fan fiction who've never been able to move beyond that. Which, if they're feeling fulfilled, then that's absolutely great. But if you're trying to do something original, then it's not so great. Amazing Gamer, they're just really good friends, will be my response. Amen. Nothing wrong with a good friendship. Fabio, I do want to make fan stuff as well. All right. But Amazing Gamer says, but people can do whatever they want to do. Headcanons are more than open for interpretation. Yes, exactly. Let the fans do what the fans want to do, so long as the fans are being respectful. If the fans aren't being respectful, then we got to hold them accountable. That's my take on it. Okay, so with T account says, should I try just bargaining a day and a time to do my projects uninterrupted and spend the rest of the week doing what my family wants? It's mostly because we run a sorry shop. Ah, okay. Also, I can hear a TV account. I'm going to take a quick drink. Sorry. All right, so TV account. My suggestion would be, obviously, be respectful to the needs of your family, and yeah, come up with a way that you can still be there to fulfill whatever obligations that you might have to your family, but let them know that, hey, there's a time where I know I can do some writing, and I really feel like this would be for the best. This won't hurt the family, won't hurt the business in any sort of way, and so will you please give me that opportunity? And if you can approach it with that mindset, then I think that would work out totally fine. Okay, so your mom asks you to help out and do certain things, like get some stuff for her. Yeah, and again, figuring out how best to be respectful is the way to go. Again, setting, like as you said, like coming up with the time that you're like, hey, this is my time to work on my stuff, but other times, like, I am absolutely here for you. Coming up with a good schedule, that really goes a long way, can really help out. So I think you have a good idea there. Let's see here. Totally Tommy was saying, I was focusing on that creep. Let's talk about the other god. She is careless, not a villain, but is tired of humans. They're like characters to her. I wonder why that is. I like that. Amazing Gamer says, what I usually tend to do is take care of all the housework in the morning before 10 a.m. That's when it's 10 a.m. I can get to work uninterrupted, which the house is all happy with. Hey, yo. Yeah, say figuring out that schedule really does a whole lot. I found myself more recently doing a whole lot more creative stuff late at night, just because as we're now getting into the holiday season here in the U.S., my time and attention is definitely needed during the day to help out with other things. So I can't always be as creative during the day as I'd like to be. So yeah, finding that compromise really helps. Okay. So guys, thank you. So if you have any more questions, then please feel free to share them in the chat. But for right now, I'm going to share with you guys some of the concerns and questions that I have. So yeah, I might actually take a drink of water right here. But I would like your guys' insights and advice to help me out with a particular conundrum. And the conundrum that I find myself, one of the conundrums I find myself in, there's a few, is that next year, I want to work on a story that will have a much greater chance of being presentable to establishment publishers. I really, really want to be traditionally published because that's one of the best ways to get good name recognition that pays a whole lot better than most other forms of being an author. And getting there means, well, you have to play to the sensibilities and the desires of traditional publishers, which, if you've read any of my big stories don't fit that. Bleed, Steam, and Steel is a steampunk novel. Steampunk novels do not do well with publishers, which is weird because steampunk is very popular, but traditional publishing has never been able to figure out how to actually market steampunk. It's really, really weird. So, yeah, I don't get it, but that's just the way that it is. So I can't push Bleed, Steam, and Steel. I can't push Monarch Mercenaries because it's too genre defying. The Legend of the Ten Lords is a story that is, quite frankly, in the minds of so many publishers, it's too big. And most publishers do not want to engage with a story that big. So I have to do something fresh and new. So a while back, my idea was to do a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And I was going to do it by making the Beast truly a horrific thing to deal with. And for extra added spice, I was going to gender swap the characters. Our Beauty character, the Belle, was going to be a dude, was going to be a knight, and the Beast was going to be just this absolute monster. When you're introduced to her, she's more like living tar. If any of you've seen the movie Fern Gully, imagine Hexus, but just more demented in terms of appearance. That's effectively Vivian, the Beast. And so I've written the book, everything in regards to who these characters are, their backstories, their motivation, how they end up coming together. And my idea was, rather than just writing one book, to write a trilogy, because that's what so many publishers want these days. They want themselves a great trilogy. And so I came up with that. I came up with a trilogy idea to really redeem the Beast character, Vivian, to take her from an absolute monster like what you're introduced to in the book, and transform her first into someone that the Belle character, Christian, can actually get along with, then develop that relationship into a genuine friendship, and then from friendship actually take them to lovers. So really the entire spectrum of enemies to lovers with this. And I wrote the first book. I've got the plans for how everything else will go. However, despite the fact that that's what traditional publishers would absolutely love to have, as I was once telling my family about this story idea, the response from my family, especially from my mom, was like, "This doesn't sound like your kind of story. This doesn't sound like something that you're exactly super excited to do." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? That's actually kind of accurate." I'm not sure if this is something that I'm absolutely gung-ho wanting to do, but I've written the first book, and fairy tale retellings are always a hot item, and it's a young romance story. Whoa, that's what the people like. Is that should I go for that? Now, the other option though is this, and this is a much newer story idea that just came to my mind recently while watching a documentary on a vampire graveyard that exists in Poland. This is a real place at a town called Penny, or Penai, depending on who's pronouncing it. It's written as Pein, or as they would say in German, Pine. Pain. In any case, the Polish town of Penay has a graveyard for vampires, which is really cool to think about. And and as I was watching this documentary of people trying to figure out, okay, so like, who were the people of Penay? Why would they have this graveyard of vampires? And I learned all these amazing things about like really old vampire lore, stuff that way predates Bram Stoker's Dracula. And there was so much cool stuff. And there was a really cool story that they had begun to discover by doing forensic science on one of the people within the graveyard, because there was a young woman who had been buried in the graveyard with a sickle around her neck. So that way, if she ever rose from the dead, she would be immediately beheaded and killed again. And what they discovered, and people were wondering, okay, so what's up with this young woman who's been buried? Why would she be buried in such a horrific manner? And what they discovered by doing forensic science was that she was not Polish, but very likely Swedish. And not only that, but she was from rich, if not noble stock, because they found gold thread in her clothing, especially in her headdress that she was buried with. On top of that, forensic science exposed that she had a really horrible disease that would have actually been physically noticeable to people. And so they began piecing together all of this stuff about this young lady who would have been a part of a conquering army or conquering force, who was accused of vampirism, and was buried as a vampire. And it inspired this really cool idea of, what if I were to write a story about the that takes place in the Great Northern War hundreds of years ago when Sweden invaded Poland, and it would follow the village of Penay as they are beset by a vampire's curse. And so people are called in to investigate what's happening with these vampires, and it's a murder mystery story. Now, you guys are suffering from some lag. Let's see here. I'm not seeing any lag on my end. Sorry if that's plaguing you guys as you're watching this. But yeah, so coming back to it, so I had a story idea that would effectively be a murder mystery set during the Great Northern War to uncover the identity and cause of these vampires afflicting a town in Poland that's beset by Swedish invaders. So that's the new story idea. And it's a really cool and exciting one. And it's one that also in many ways would be bankable. So here's the question. I want to hear from you guys. Which one would you prefer more? Would you find yourselves preferring more a trilogy that's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast that goes pretty dark with the Beast, has a whole enemies to lovers deal going on, fits in well with what people want for teenage romantic fantasy, or do a historical fiction with vampire investigations in a Polish town, uncovering what is going on during a war. Which one would sound more interesting to you? Because in the next year, this is something I need to consider. What kinds of stories I want to work on? What stories am I going to dedicate time to? And go from there. So, which story do you guys think I should spend time on? I want to hear your thoughts. Lag only lasted a moment. All right. So I'm waiting for you guys' thoughts. You guys can watch me die repeatedly in this, not exactly boss fight scene, but more like this boss chase scene. Oh my gosh, this game is so much fun, but man, it is rough sometimes. Whoop. Say no thoughts so far? Oh man. I'll give you guys a moment. There is another issue that I find myself facing, and I'll go into more detail about that later. And I think, especially for you, TV account, you'll find stuff to sympathize and empathize with there. So TV account says, I think the Beauty and the Beast thing might work if you do a little tweaking. It can work. So what kind of tweaking would you say that you would want that you would suggest done with that TV account? Say, what could I do to improve this, to at least improve the premise of the story? Roblox says, I'm personally, I'm not a big fan of romance and think an invitation story or an investigation story is always a good read. I'm personally a big fantasy fan. I believe I would prefer the trilogy. However, I care a lot less about what I would prefer and more about what you would find fun to write. Amazing Gamer says, I say go for the story with the most work done on it thus far, launch it, then backtrack to the other project. So that way overworking isn't an issue. All right. Modern awkward silence. No comment. All right. So far, it looks like we've got 3 out of 4 comments leaning more towards the Beauty and the Beast story. All right. Darn autocorrect. Yes, darn autocorrect. It's always a killer. TV account, especially if it's based off something familiar, and that's what executives want. I have you try a what if thing. Oh, so kind of, yeah, doing a what if. Yeah, in this case, the Beauty and the Beast story definitely is a what if. What if? Now, what if the gender roles were swapped? The Beast was a woman and the Belle was a man. And definitely a what if the Beast was absolutely disgusting. And one of the reasons why I thought it'd be fun to try the absolutely disgusting route is because, like, go back and rewatch, for instance, the Disney Beauty and the Beast story. And when you look at it, yeah, the Beast is monstrous and everything, but there's still enough human to him that you can immediately identify, oh yeah, this is the prince, and the prince is going to be hot. So all that Belle needs to do is save the prince and fall in love, and then she's going to get herself a hunk of a man. But what if in this case, yeah, you knew this was the princess, and the princess is absolutely putrid, both as a person and as a physical being. That was my what if. Totally Tommy says, I like stories that don't try to be too sad. That makes the story slow, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. And that's definitely something with the first book. The first book is definitely a whole lot slower with a lot more setup. I'll have to work on making it a little bit more interesting and action-packed if I go that route. Amazing Gamer says, I'd also say, yeah, Beauty and the Beast story. Of course, as we know, it is a tale as old as time. That is an interesting concept. Okay, then. Well, thank you, everyone, for your feedback. And if you got more, I'd be happy to read it. Say, getting feedback from other people definitely helps out a whole lot. One of the things that actually made Bleed, Steam, and Steel the book that became was getting feedback while I was working at Albertsons as a courtesy clerk. One day I just decided I would strike up a conversation with one of my coworkers about the story that I was working on. I shared with her some of my thoughts and what my big question was. I said, I have got 4 novellas that actually are supposed to tell a whole story. Should I publish each novella separately, or should I combine them all into one story? And my coworker said, that sounds like it would be a great whole story. You should bring it all together. And then there was a customer who was in the checkout line who was listening to me talk, and he was like, I have no idea who this person was. Never ever saw him again in my life. And he was just all like, he's like, young man, that sounds fantastic. I'd put that all into one book. Do it. and so thanks to a coworker and to a random guy at the store, the Bleed, Steam, and Steel became one novel instead of 4 novellas. Let's see here. TV count. How do I hold them accountable to the deal? Because that's my biggest problem. All right, I'll come back to that. Totally Tommy, you missed my comments. How common? Oh, which comment, though? I got the stream lag. I got the awkward silence. So how do I make 2 gods have a romance friendship? They're alone in some scene. I won't make them kiss. I don't draw mouths. So how do you make 2 gods have a romance or a friendship? You build up a relationship. What makes a friendship? Friendships are built on common interests, the ability to enjoy each other's company, to have good conversations, to learn from each other. Say things like that are what build up a friendship, and the rest is discovery. A friendship is largely made of shared experiences. So the commonalities that you can have with other people allow you to have that have that foundation that you then build on, and then from there as you build together on that relationship, you build all kinds of experiences, memories, and that's really what builds a friendship. So there you have it. That's how you would make gods become friends. They have to have those commonalities. They have to have shared experiences, ones that they enjoy, and reasons why they enjoy each other's company. Say, there's your answer. The Amazing Gamer, unfortunately, events and backstory work better for sequel work. Maybe hints at it in the first installment, perking the reader's eyebrow, leaving them wondering more about the character's past. Oh, yes, most definitely. Roblox is down. If you could make it grittier, like you were saying, even someone like me who's not a big fan of romance might find it interesting. Draw them dancing and you've got the point across. Only makes sense story-wise, of course. So Roblox, definitely with this retelling of Beauty and the Beast, it is pretty dark. And actually, I don't think Camille and I have actually ever brought this up on a live stream. But I shared the book with her and actually with everyone else over on our Discord, at least a certain scene. And I was like, okay, this is a pretty intense scene, because it involved basically sexual assault from the beast on the bell, and from Vivian's side on over to Christian. I'm like, okay, what do you think of this scene? And Camille was the one who really provided feedback on that, and she's like, okay, then she's like, I get what you're doing here. However, if you have her do this, she's going to be so unlikable. You're going to be spending more time trying to make her a redeemed character, which in the eyes of some people, you'll never be able to accomplish. So it's like, is that a risk you want to take? And I'm like, that's a good point. But it's a really good scene, too. So I had to go back and I had to change up the scene where rather than the focus of it being on assault, it became kind of a moment of rage on Vivian's part, being around a person who isn't cursed, like her and all of her servants are, and having her lash out because of the memories that she's had. And she's been tortured in this monster form for hundreds of years. The world of fairy tales that she had been a part of no longer exists in the story. It's all been sealed away. Which, wink, wink, if any of you want to know what that sealed away world is like, you can go ahead and you can read my Puss in Boots story, which is already out and available for anyone who wants to read that. But that takes place very, very differently. It's a very different timeline. I say a very different setting, very different time than my Beauty and the Beast story. But they are technically connected in the same world. It's just a matter of knowing where one is happening and where the other one's happening. And then you might be able to start filling in really what's going on. Wink, wink. Which does give me some incentive to do this Beauty and the Beast story, but it exists independent of what I'm doing with Puss in Boots. So yeah. So thank you guys for that insight. I do have another issue that I will share with you guys, but let me first read what you have been putting into here. And then we'll start wrapping it up. Because we are not going 5 hours again like we did last week. Nope. And I've got things I still need to do tonight. Tommy says, time is breaking. The world is ending, so it's going good for them, but they don't realize it, which might make them happier, which might work out for romance. Interesting. Okay. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I'm Omega, working on the No Evil Summon fic. Ooh, very nice. Very nice. Excuse me. Iso says, I've always struggled with giving characters meaningful flaws. And yeah, Lynn is an excellent example of that. So when it comes to meaningful flaws, Iso, I kind of point you back to what Nathan was doing last week with his 4D character development, where you think about what kinds of flaws a character has that they can overcome, and then flaws that they can't overcome. And that's a pretty big and significant difference. So like, for instance, within Bleed, Steam, and Steel, Zemon will never get over the fact that he's a cripple. He just can't. It's just a part of who he is. However, a weakness that he can overcome is he can learn that being as confident as he's been can be a real weakness. He can learn his own limitations, and he can learn who to actually trust. Because if he trusts too freely, then he might open himself up for disaster and betrayal. So those are lessons learned. How to not be so naive. How to be trusting in a way that that doesn't completely cut you off from other people, but allows you to still be open. So, like, that's an example right there. There are flaws that characters can work to overcome, and then there's those that they will never be able to overcome because it's a part of who they are on an absolutely natural and fundamental level. So something to think of right there. Omega says, yeah, this is the one where everyone was turned into dinosaurs. I remember you were talking about that. Fabio says, animation is one universe created by a god-adjacent and concept dude named Jash, where that universe keeps being remade and only isn't when assigned created heroes succeed and basically retired. Again, I haven't started, but I'm still seeing where I can find stuff that may have problems, even if I'm just dumping at every instance I relate to, I guess. Okay. The Amazing Gamer, something else I may also consult the server once I enter with is this. How can I make a character who was once bright and optimistic, who's now lost everything and shut anyone in the world left out, come back from that depression, anger, and trauma? Excellent question there, Amazing Gamer. Obviously that will change from story to story. And what uh what I would recommend in that case is that is that for a character to discover hope again, it's it's ultimately about finding someone that they can help. And I think that looking, for instance, into stories like Logan, um, is a good example. Um, you can also look. Oh crud! Uh, think about all these radar movies. Uh, the Equalizer is, I think, also a good example where you've got people who are broken, but what they do is they find someone who they can help. And they find a reason why, like they realize there's this person who doesn't need to live a horrible, broken life. And I do have the power to change that. And because they were once a better person, and they can tap back into who they once were, pull that on out, and then become the hero that this other person needs. I feel like that's one of the best ways of going about Amazing Gamer. If you want to have someone who has become jaded and become lost, return again as a hero and be the person that they need to be, they need to have someone to be the hero for. And it can't just be themselves. Like, eventually will have to also become themselves. They need to also eventually become better for themselves. But it begins with trying to help someone else out. That sense of selflessness does a whole lot of good. And it makes makes the readers, makes the audience want that character to become better. So I hope that helps you out there. Fabio, like Shiny Shade, should the little guy really be this okay with being basically the only one that doesn't change nor reset and just keeps going, living? Totally, Tommy, I moved to PC, way more better, so tell me some notes to take. I forgot them. Well, totally, Tommy, this is where having this live stream recorded is so dang good, because you can always come back to it. But again, as far as relationships go, because that's kind of been your big question, always remember that that there needs to be commonality, between these characters, so that way they actually have a reason to spend time with each other. Friendships and good relationships are not just simply built on what people have in common, but also on the experiences that they have together. Commonality brings people together to have those experiences, but they need to have good conversations, good memories that they have together, goals that they then start having together as friends. All of that's pretty important. If you don't have that, then it's very hard to justify a good relationship. So I hope that you really take that to heart. Because that's really kind of like, I think, the big thing that you're looking for. And that's how you can bring together a really creepy and really chaotic character. Is, again, the commonalities that force them to be together, force them to talk, and then through those interactions, they develop experiences, shared memories that become a foundation for their relationship. So I hope that is some good advice for you right there. And so let's see here. The last thing that I, for myself, want to bring up is so next year, next year we'll change some things for the harem, not in a huge fundamental way, but kind of in how, at least I, for instance, am able to interact with people. And that being that, well, as I brought up earlier, being an artist doesn't always really pay the bills the way that you hope that it would. And I will need to get myself a better paying job. Say, I would hope that YouTube might be that fun full-time job, and I still hold out hope for that. It's still something that I'm working towards. However, where I am right now, I have to accept the reality that it's not paying the way that I hoped that it would. and I can't rely on just very small paychecks from YouTube. And my books aren't selling like hotcakes either. So that means, well, I've got to get another job while I continue to work on being better at my craft, being a better commentator, entertainer, and author. And that's part of the reason why I want to be traditionally published and all that. But what that means is that I'm going to have to change up how I do things, what I've got time for, and so looking forward to that, and it's something that I think we can get more into at a later time, is really knowing your goals. Set setting good setting good goals that can setting good goals that can be reached. That is a whole lesson in and of itself, which I unfortunately don't have time to do tonight. Uh, so bear that in mind for a future uh, for a future live stream. But in thinking about limited time, because I won't be able to simply do YouTube all the time and writing all the time like I've been able to do now for 2 years, which has been amazing. But reality and duty call. Uh, I want to get your guys's again, your feedback on this. So absolutely, for next year, I will be working on the Legend of the Ten Lords, getting the fourth book in the series ready for publishing. I also have another fairy tale retelling, just like Puss in Boots, in the works. This one will be The King's Serpent. This is a story that almost no one has ever heard of before from the Brothers Grimm, and I'm really, really excited to share it with other people. So I'll be working on the King's Serpent and on the Legend of the Ten Lords #4, as well as working on the fifth and sixth book in that series. I'm almost done with the first draft for the sixth and final book. It's all really awesome, whole lot of fun, and that's going to eat up quite a bit of time. And so, as well as trying to figure out, okay, what might I want to do with this Beauty and the Beast retelling? What other story should I work on? Should I focus on doing the sequel to Bleed, Steam, and Steel? It's been a while since I published that book, but it'd be fun to do it. Be fun to work on the sequel. Should I work on like really, really just dedicating a whole bunch of time to this Beauty and the Beast story? Or another thought is, should I do the sequel to Tumble Teller? Now, this kind of does mean you'd have to know a little bit about all the stories I'm working on, but Tumble Teller is the one about the Dragon Bard, which is a fun book to write. A lot of people have really enjoyed that one, and it will help me out. Also, another way of building up to eventually writing Whitefire, which has been one of my biggest projects. It's been in the works now for almost a decade. Holy cow. That's kind of embarrassing to think about. So what would you guys think? What do you guys think I should do? Should I go the route of just simply focusing on the fairy tale story? Should I focus on doing the sequel to Bleed, Steam, and Steel, or should I work on doing a sequel to Tumble Teller, the story of a bardic dragon? So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Because again, your guys' thoughts help me at the very least to get a feel for what other people are interested in. And knowing what other people are interested in helps me to know kind of where my energy ought to go. Especially because I will have less of it having to do another job. Whatever that job may be. Don't know yet. It will be an adventure to find out. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Amazing Gamer says, can see that working with the other mains around the protagonist, I've planned to show up, especially with the story happening during the events of another, a ticking time bomb, metaphorically. Because the world freaking died yesterday. Totally, Tommy, in my story, the real escape, the hell, was the friends we made along the way. Literally. Very nice. All right. Amazing Gamer says, I'm indeed in a similar situation. A part-time job alongside YouTube is in the cards. The reality of the financial world beckons. Oh, absolutely. You can't escape it. Excuse me. And you've got to be cognizant of that. It's nice to live in a fantasy, but the ultimate reality is that we don't exist in one. Amazing Gamer says, tumble, I say. The people have waited long enough, but make sure not to rush it. Roblox says, tumble sounds fun, so Tumble Teller. So 2 votes for Tumble Teller. I hear you talking a lot about Bleed, Steam, and Steel. A sequel would likely be really fun, but a Tumble Teller sequel also sounds interesting. I've already done a little bit of work on the sequel to Bleed, Steam, and Steel, but it was one that, as I was working on it, I just did not have quite as much creativity for it. I wasn't quite feeling the mojo, but Tumble Teller was definitely written from a place of a novice author, really capturing his experience in the story of a dragon. And now that I've gotten more experience under my belt and I've seen just how hard it is to get into the industry, I've been thinking about what it would be like to write a story from that perspective of the main character Mikulirian trying to get into the Stormweavers Guild, which is the Guild of Storytellers, because at the end of the first book, her life takes a certain turn for the tragic that will make it harder for her to get her stories told. I said, so in that case, a Tumble Teller sequel would probably be more productive. Say, all right. So that's good stuff to consider. Thank you, guys. Totally Tommy, the thing that keeps me up at night is when I get ideas and I keep thinking about them so I don't forget them. I know how that goes. Eventually sleep just takes over. And weirdly enough, if I actually want to go to sleep, I think about a romantic subplot for one of my characters. I'm like, oh, how should they get together? And then I go out. I guess romance bores me or something. Fabio, if you do want to get to it, it starts when mentioning that Shiny Shade totally does have trauma. At the very least, if he's going to be okay later, a why's gotta exist. Well, exactly. You gotta have the why. Stuff shouldn't just simply exist in a bubble. If action exists in a bubble, it isn't really all that good. If romance exists in a bubble, it really isn't all that fulfilling. Politics don't exist in a bubble. Horror doesn't just simply exist in a bubble. Even though you can tell a really great horror story really quickly and succinctly, it's always better to have that relatable element, what takes the horror out and makes it applicable to the audience, growing it. So yeah, all right, everyone, thank you for your thoughts. If there's, let's see here, I had one more thought before we start wrapping up, but it's escaped me. Oh, that was it. This actually comes back to what Amazing Gamer was bringing up with their train chase situation. So in another comment that I got a little while back on one video, where this was the rant that I did about how people were saying, hey, if you just have Blade go up against a bunch of vampires, that's all you need to make a great movie. I'm like, no, you gotta have a whole lot more. Blade killing a bunch of vampires is cool, but unless there's a reason to it, you're going to lose people along the way. And I remember, and I kind of used as an example, I'm like, if what this person said about all you need is action and a story is good, then there's no reason for people to hate the Rings of Power, because there's a lot of action in Rings of Power. It's just all really bad action. And one person was like, no, like if Galadriel just spent more time killing trolls and orcs, no one would complain. I'm like, that someone's not been paying attention. But really, if you're going to write a good action scene, it needs its proper setup. It needs to be properly executed, and there needs to be consequences. I once went to a panel at Comic-Con about the best fights in all of anime. Now, granted, that's very subjective. How do you know what's going to be the absolute best fight? There's going to be those people who are like, anything that has to do with Madara is like the best fight of all time. Then you have the stands for One Piece, or like any One Piece fight is better than anything else. And then you'll then have those people who say, no, the psychological thriller battles of Death Note are the best ever. You don't need to be throwing fists to have amazing action, which is true. But so in any case, I went to this panel and I got to watch 5 fight scenes, all of which were very entertaining, very intricate. And I only really remember 3 of them out of 5. One, I don't even remember the story. I don't remember the characters involved. The only reason why I remember it was because it was so disturbing to watch. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. It was not pleasing. I only remember it because it was so off-putting. And if your fight is super off-putting and it's not really meant to be, then can you really call it one of the coolest fights of all time? I don't think so. Oh, man. Well, another fight that I did remember from it, and the only reason why I remember it was because it had Goku. But do I remember the setup? No. Do I remember what the stakes were? No. Do I remember why it mattered? No. I only remember because there was Goku in it. And that was it. And so I'm like, okay, because I had context for one fight, it stuck with me. For another, because it was so disturbing. The one fight out of the 5 that I remembered most clearly, and the only one that I've ever watched again, was the one fight out of the whole panel where the panel sat down and said, okay, this is the story. You have this orphan who's on the run because people think that he is the last remaining son of the emperor. And if he is, he should inherit the throne. So people are after him to assassinate him, to kill off, to make sure that he can't inherit the throne. And he teams up with this Ronin samurai who promises, even though the payment's very low, that he will protect the kid. The samurai has a very horrible past, and he never unsheathes his sword because he's afraid he will start murdering people again. And they then said in this final scene, the last remaining villain finally gets the samurai to unsheath his sword for the first time in years. And now they fight for the destiny of the boy. And so I had the context, had never watched the movie. The movie is Sword of the Stranger. And so it stuck with me, because I now knew at least something about these characters. I knew why they were fighting. I knew what stakes were up for grabs. And so the fight, as amazing as the other 4 were, this one stuck with me because I knew the story. And so coming back to writing good action, this is why I say it doesn't matter what kind of action story you're writing or what kinds of details you wish to put into your action writing. The most important things to make a good action story, to make a good action scene, is the setup, understanding the characters, why this action is even happening in the first place, and then actually executing the battle well. That will depend on story to story. There is no one right or wrong way to do an action scene. And then finally, there need to be actual consequences for what has happened. If there are no consequences, then there's no reason for this action scene to have happened. So that is kind of my parting advice right here. Let me read the last things you guys have written, And then it will be time for me to shut off for the night because I still have other things that I got to do. So Tully Tommy says, I was about to ask you something, but I forgot. You don't know everything. You write, but I was about to ask something that's very unrelated. My brain went like, if you make things equals your God equals you know everything. That's sometimes the way it comes across. Roblox Ella, trying to think of something you've been trying to write for a while, then falling asleep is relatable. Yes, you get it, Roblox. You know what it's like. Mace Gamer says, I just listened to the audio story of the first chapter of my story, and then I'm out in 5 minutes. Fabio, getting to my messages about it up there if I wasn't clear. Now, Fabio, I think I've read just about every message that you've sent, so I don't know what you're saying that I'm missing. Story of a hero being born basically right after the last one straight up failed big time, and Shiny Shade surely includes that when filling the hero in on this as usual. Okay, if you do want to get to it, it starts with mentioning that Shiny Shade does have trauma. Well, I already read that. At the very least, if he's got to be okay later, a why's got to exist. Yep. So I already said, yeah, you got to have the why. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. All right. Totally Time says, for the credits, what name should I use for you? Well, you can always just simply use Lars from Camille's Harem. That works out pretty well for me. ISO's going to post, let's see here. ISO, something just clicked for me regarding Hunter and Lynn's romance. Not going to say here because it'll be long and filled with spoilers. I'm definitely going to expand on this. Excellent. Glad that you had some inspiration, ISO. Probably post it on Discord. Hey, if you do, please make sure that you that you add me so that way I can have a look at it because I really am interested on what inspiration has hit you. The Amazing Gamer says, I've seen an abundance of chases in media. I don't want to copy and paste what exists already, especially when I literally made a video essay on plagiarism and its dangers. Hey, yeah, very good. And plagiarism sucks. Definitely pay respects to what other people have done that you've borrowed from. Fabio, yeah, it was just the message you read about the trauma. It was about my first message, that mentioned his trauma. All right, got it. Okay, then, guys. Well, guys and gals, say thank you so much for being with me tonight on this live stream. You guys have been great as usual. And thank you for feeling okay with sharing your questions and your concerns with me. I hope that I could bring at least some answers and some insights to you guys. I might not have given you exactly what you wanted or maybe necessarily what you needed. But I hope that at least by me giving you some answers, it's given you at least some inspiration. And if it's not exactly what you need, hopefully it helps you figure out exactly what it is that you or your story needs in order to help you become the best authors and artists, since many of you are artists, that you absolutely can be. Because again, and I'll keep on coming back to this again and again, you need your stories. Your stories need you, and the world needs your stories. Macy Gamer, thanks for all the advice. I'll be checking back while writing on Sunday as well, maybe joining the Discord if I can. Hey, Amazing Gamer, and to anyone else who wishes to join our Discord, if you have the desire to do so, please reach out to us in the comments of this stream. So when it's finally done, the comments section will open up, not the chat section, but the comments section. Say that you want to join our Discord server, and we will then begin to interact with you there in the comments, and we will begin the process of bringing you on board. We would love to have you join our journey and also be a part of your journey as well. So with all that being said, everyone, thank you so much again for being here. Have a fantastic day, evening, morning, wherever you are at. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.